This is a tutorial on making custom prop textures for Utherverse in Paint.net. Hello everyone, Mr. E. A friend of mine named Tori wanted to know how she could custom texture a prop in Utherverse. Specifically, the Turkish couch. It's a nice prop that has matching side ends as well as a matching footstool. However, the original texture leaves something to be desired. So in this tutorial, we're going to change the Turkish couch from this to this. Now, Tori may choose a different texture altogether, but for this tutorial, I've chosen a nice red tuck and roll. And I've also changed the fascia board to solid wood. So how did I do this? Let's get started. First, we go to the Wraith's website, where most of the Utherverse prop maps are located. I've already pre-filtered the search for Turkish, just to get the prop maps that match that. When you scroll down, you'll see that there are numerous images and overlays for the Turkish couch. However, you'll notice they're basically all the same. That's because this one image is used for both the center part of the Turkish couch, as well as the ends and the footstool. It's kind of a clever idea. Different parts of the prop map apply to the different props. So I'm going to select one, bring up the main image, and then I'm going to right-click and then copy the image. And now I'm going to open Paint.net. Okay, here's the finished version of the tuck and roll style Turkish couch. But how did I get this? The first thing we're going to have to do is create a new image. So we'll go up to File, right up there in the left. And then we will select New. So you can just Control N to shortcut that. The default should be the default of the size on your clipboard, which is 1024 by 1024. Select OK. And then we'll Control V to paste in the image that we got from the Wraith's website. Before we get started editing, I'm going to assume you're like Tori and have never really used Paint.net before, so I'm going to discuss a few tools. The toolbox you'll use most often is the one my cursor is over, right here, called Tools. However, there are a couple others. There's the Color Tool Palette toolbox down there, and the Layers toolbox. You'll use that a lot. There's also, if I go up here to the right, the History toolbox. I don't use that too much, so I usually just keep it minimized. So now I'm going to go over to the toolbox, and the upper left icon there is the Rectangle Selection tool. That allows you to draw a rectangle on the screen, like so, or down here, or wherever. And then you go back up and select the little white arrow icon there, and that allows you to change the size of that rectangle, this one right here. You can change the size of that rectangle however you like, just to highlight an area. You won't make any changes to the map while you're using that tool. But if you go up here and select the blue arrow, and then change the size of the triangle, see what happens here? You're really distorting your image. Sometimes that's exactly what you want to do, sometimes not. So be careful using that white arrow and blue arrow, select the right one. Now probably the most important tool in Paint.net is this little blue button up here. That is your undo button. If you feel like you've just messed up your image completely, you can just hit that undo button and undo all the changes that you just made, getting back to the point that you were happy with. Right beside the undo button is a redo button, so you can actually go back and forth between the changes that you've made. Okay, so those are how to use some of the basic tools. The first thing we'll want to do is get rid of that little rectangle on the screen. We'll go back and select the rectangle box there, then we'll click outside the image, and then poof, it should all go away and nothing is selected. So now we're going to start altering our image. A simple adjustment you can make, you go up here to the Adjustment tab. I have a bunch of tools here. I have probably downloaded every plugin for Paint.net. Your version may not have all these, but it should have the hue and saturation. So let's select that right down here. There you go, and it's set on what I last used it at, so I'm going to reset all those to their default numbers. So move this aside. That's what our image originally looks like. But we're going to play with these sliders and kind of change it to make it a different color. Of course, you'll notice it changes the entire prop map, even the wood, and that's not what we want to do. we are going to tear this map apart and work on different layers separately. So we will cancel this, and now we're back to our original prop map. Now let's tear the image apart. We're going to go over here and select our little rectangle box. And we're going to try and just select the top cushion. Just kind of line it up right at the bottom there. Feel free to pause this video if you want to kind of work along with your Paint.net at the same time. Alright, our selection is where we want it. Now we're going to hit Control X to cut it out completely. You'll see this little gray and white checkerboard area. That tells you that there's nothing there. It's a transparent portion of the image. Now we're going to go over to our Layer toolbox right over here, and we're going to add a new layer. And right up there you can see it's defaulted to the name Layer 2, but that gets confusing, so we're going to change that. I brought up this Properties box by hitting this little Properties icon down here. Trust me, you'll be glad that you changed the name on these layers, especially if you end up with 10 or 12 different layers. Okay, so that layer is now named Cushions. And we will paste our clipboard contents right there. And then for good measure, we're going to select the background layer and rename it Wood. You can see that the image in the center of our screen looks like all one image. But over here in the Layers box, you'll actually see that it's two portions, the wood and the cushion. Okay, now we just got to get the other cushions out of here, so let's highlight this one, kind of play with the rectangle, get it exactly where you want it. It's a little too high there, so grab my white arrow tool, drag that down a bit, and there you go. And then we just Control X to cut it, move up to the top layer, and paste it in. Now we just have to do the same thing with the third cushion piece, so we'll drag this box over there, and we'll make it fit that cushion down there. That's about it. And there you go. And we'll cut that one out of the wood layer. And we're going to go back up to our cushion layer and paste it in there. So now we have all of our wood pieces on one layer and all of our cushion pieces on another layer. And we can make our rehues or adjustments, any recolorings or brightness controls on each layer independently without affecting the other one. So, for example, let's take the cushions up here, and let's make sure we're clicked outside of the image. Okay, now let's go up to our adjustments, grab the Hue tool again, and you can see that we can change the color of the cushions, but we're not changing the color of the wood. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to understand how layers work. Again, notice how the wood down here stays the same, no matter what color I change the cushions to. Conversely, maybe I like the cushions, but I want the wood to be a little different tone. In that case, I select the wood layer, and then select the brightness contrast tool. Move that over there, reset those to their defaults, and then just start playing with the sliders till I can, get the wood darker and richer, or maybe lighter and more bleached out, whatever look I'm looking for. For what I plan to do, I want to make the wood a little richer in color, a little deeper. I'm pretty happy with that down there, so I'll say OK. And in case you don't notice the difference, I'll go up here to the undo button and the redo right beside it and kind of switch back and forth between it. You can see the before and after as the wood gets deeper in color. The next thing I want to do is get rid of that little piece of fabric at the bottom part of the wood. I want to make that go away, so I'm going to actually zoom in. Lower right corner is your zoom in and out tools. Adjust the screen to kind of get that where I can work on it. Now I kind of like this little fascia board that's on the side of the prop, so I'm actually going to put that over that area where the fabric is. I'm going to select my little rectangle, and then I'm going to copy that portion. And I'm on the wrong layer there. Let me go up and change to the wood. Copy it then. Okay, and then I'm going to add a new layer. So right there, layer 3, it's going to be a temporary layer. I'm not going to rename it. And then I'm going to paste that fascia board into layer 3. Let's paste it in, and then I'm just going to move it. And then I'm going to use my little blue arrow tool, and I'm going to, that way it actually distorts the image. There you go. I'm just going to kind of drag it right over that fabric area. You just sort of play with it, resize it, get it to cover everything there, that side, and then over to the right. And then when you're happy with the placement of it and the sizing of it, covers everything there, then we're going to go down here and merge the layers right there. That'll actually bind those two together. So now that temporary layer 3 is back on the wood layer, covering that ugly fabric. Okay, so now we need to get back to normal view. That little box there, if you click on it, there it goes. It makes it fit to the screen again, the entire image. And you can see our handiwork on our wood is pretty good. So now the next step is to do something about the other cushions. I'm going to add a new layer over here so I can line up the new cushions over the old cushions. In fact, I will click on the Properties box and I will rename that New Cushions. And then click on OK. Now up here at top is another image of a pillow with kind of a tuck and roll texture. I just found this image on the internet. And I had already pre-selected a rectangle in the center, so I'll copy that. Then I'll go back over to the image we're working on, make sure I'm on the New Cushions layer, and paste it in. I'm going to grab a corner of this image and stretch it to make it fit. If you hold down the Shift key while you're doing this, it always maintains the same ratio as far as height and width. But in this case, I'm actually just going to have to adjust it manually to get it to be kind of halfway through the cushion there. Now the reason I'm only going halfway is if I stretched it out all the way to the right, it would look terribly, distorted out of ratio. Now to get it to go all the way across and fill that cushion, so it's on this side over here, I'm going to actually add another layer and copy or actually paste that same image onto that new layer. So there's yet another new layer. I won't bother naming that one because it's just going to be temporary. And I will paste that cushion image onto that layer. As you can see right there, they're both the same right there. Now, while layer 4 is selected, I'm going to go up to the Layer tab, and then I'm going to select Flip Horizontal. So it'll flip it over to the right side. So now these two layers, layer 4 and the new cushions, are mirror images of each other, which is nice for being able to line them up in the center. I often use that technique when I'm making seamless images. So now I could draw a rectangle around the image on layer 4, right there. And I'll go over and make sure the blue editing tool is selected. And then I can just use the left and right arrows to actually move that image to where I want it to be. We'll just move it back to the left, get it to line up in the center, right about there. You can also see this puts a nice little crease right here in the center, kind of makes it look like two cushions on the sofa. And now we're going to merge layer 4 down onto the new cushions layer and make that all a single image. Go up here, select that, and then merge, and those are now all one image. Now we'll tend to the bottom cushions. We're going to add yet another layer. Again, I won't rename it, it's temporary. I will paste that cushion image onto it, drag it over here, and then outside the box I will right click, and then I can rotate that, get it as much to 90 degrees as I can, try and line it up correctly. Then I'm going to drag it over to that cushion on the left. There you go, and kind of just take the corner, resize it to cover that. Pull it down, get it about where I want. And now I'll paste that cushion image again so I can cover the tiny little cushion down there. I'll reorient it by 90 degrees again, clicking outside the box. And it's pretty close there. And then drag it over the cushion for the footstool, like so. Again, make my final adjustments. And once I get it where I want, I will merge layer 4, a temporary layer, back down onto the new cushions layer. And then my new cushions layer will be complete. And then I'll click outside the image box to deselect that rectangle on the screen. Now we're going to recolor those cushions. These cushions happen to be black, but you always want to make sure you have black and white or white and black. You can take any color image and change it to black and white. But this is already black and white, so I'm just going to invert the colors right there. You'll find that tool on the Adjustments tab. You can see it's gone to white and black now instead of black and white. If that tool isn't on your Adjustments tab, it might be wise to download all the various plugins from the Paint.net site. This technique is known as making a mask. This is how many of the clothing designers in Utherverse add the nice ruffles and folds and creases to their clothing. Our next step is to add another layer. Then we're going to go over to our main toolbox and select the paint bucket tool right there. There you go. And go down to our color palette tool and dump that pre-selected purple color onto that layer. Then we go over to our layers toolbox and select properties. And we're going to move this little slider here. It changes the opacity of the image, so the purple becomes lighter and you can see the texture of the cushions. About to 200, that should be enough opacity. And the blending mode, you can just play with these. I'm going to select multiply. You can see how it will look. Select OK. And then we're going to merge that opaque purple layer down onto our new cushion layer. Right there. Now, notice what just happened there. The entire area, including the wood, just turned purple. How do we avoid that? Well, it's a simple enough fix because we were smart enough to put this image on 3 different layers. So we're just going to go down to our wood layer here, and we're going to move that layer up. We have that button there, that blue upward button. Move it up again, all the way to the top, so that the wood will show on top, and the rest of it is transparent, so you'll see the purple cushions below it. Now, when I originally made this sofa or couch for Tori, purple is what I used, but in World I didn't like the way it looked, so I changed it to red. So the settings should still be present in my adjustments. I'll go up to Adjustments and Hue and Saturation, right there. And it's preset on my last settings that I used when I colored those cushions. You can see the hue there is 106, saturation is 95, lightness is -7. I'll just accept those. And I also made those cushions a little darker. So I'll just go to the brightness and contrast tool and adjustments. It should still be preset where it was. And no, it's not, because I adjusted the brightness and contrast on the wood earlier in this video. So I'll have to tweak these a little bit, kind of get it to match what my final product was. And just take this and slide it over. If I lower the brightness, it kind of makes the image darker. There you go, that's pretty good. And I'll leave the contrast sort of where it was. Okay. Now before I save my final product, I'm going to save this as a layered image. That's a PDN file for paint.net. It'll save each layer independently. So I'll give this image a name, Tori map. No, how about Tori sofa map? And then I'll click on save. There you go, it's saving. And the reason you want to save this as a PDN file on separate layers is in time you might get tired of the red sofa. So you can just pull up the PDN and go to the hue and saturation on the new cushions layer there. Go to adjustments and hue and saturation, and you can easily change the color, something gaudy like green or purple or whatever colors you want, maybe a blue sofa. It's much easier than having to go back in and lift the wood off the finished product again. So there, we'll just have another version that's kind of a tealish. And when we're all done with our product, we're going to go up top here, and we're going to merge these down and make them a single layer so that we can save it as either a PNG or a JPG file. I usually use PNG, and especially for transparencies. I've got a couple versions of this sofa up there, so next in line is Tori 4. And we'll save that, and then we'll upload that image to PhotoBucket. So that's the teal version, and the one that I showed you at the beginning of this video, the previous version was the red one, which is right here, the Tori 3 version. So let's go back in World and see how everything looks. Well, there's our red tuck and roll, the Tori 3 image, on all 3 pieces of the Turkish couch, including the footstool and the side piece. I think they came out pretty good. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll watch my other silly little Utherverse videos and tutorials on my YouTube channel. Until next time, this is Mr. E saying, be well.